I just want to continue on where we left last week, if you've not been here. Doing a series on free indeed, and this is the third week. One of the things I believe what's happening is, even if you have not been on here for the last 2 weeks, I believe that God's breaking through in people's lives. Amen. It's God's desire for us to live a life of freedom, for us to live a life of joy, and more than anything, to see a fresh passion stirred up in people's heart for Jesus. Amen. So, I started sharing on my story of how I met Lord, how I met the Jesus and the encounter I had and years back, and just to put a background of where I'm coming from. And last week I shared about how important it was to have a repentant heart. And a lot of times when people think about a repentant heart, they think, oh, you know what, I gave my life to Jesus, I repented, I came back. But it's not a once in a lifetime thing, or it's not once in 10 years or once in 5 years. It's a daily, it's something which we do daily, having a repentant heart. And I believe that's where God pours out His Spirit, God pours out His love and pours out His joy. And it comes also with a broken heart, a broken and a contrite heart. I believe repentance can never come without a broken and a contrite heart. And so many times, people, I'm going to be speaking about certain other things also for the next 3 weeks, which have been so important in my life, and I still think that every day it's important. But, and it still continues to be important. But what I want to share is, so many times people think, oh, you know what, if you want a financial breakthrough, you give, you get. And I definitely believe in that. I believe in financial breakthrough. I believe in the power of giving, and I'm going to be sharing about some of my stories over 19 years. But what I've also seen is having a repentant heart, having a soft heart is so important, for us to break through in areas where we are seeking a breakthrough. Whether it's finances, whether it's healing, whether it's miracles, whether it's relationships. So repentant heart is so important. So that's what I was sharing last week. Today, I want to really share something which has been so dear in my life, and I'm going to share some stories also with it, and how I'm going to share about healing from offenses. And if you can turn your Bibles to the book of Luke 17:1, and then Psalms 55 verses 12 to 14. It says, "Then Jesus said to His disciples, 'It is impossible that no offenses should come, but woe to him through whom they do come.' And Psalms 55 verses 12 to 14 says, 'For it is not an enemy who reproaches me, then I could bear it. Nor is it one who hates me, who has exalted himself against me, then I could hide from him. But it was you, a man of my equal, my companion and my acquaintance. We took sweet counsel together and walked to the house of God in a throng.'" Listen, a lot of times, what I've seen in my personal life or in people, many people are unable to function in their calling because of hurts and offenses in their life. We're not able to function to the true calling which God has for us because of offenses and hurts. And most of the times, the offenses come from people we love. People in our families, people who we sleep together, we eat together, who we work together, And that's why even David over here is saying, it didn't come from outside, it came from people who took sweet counsel together. It can be people we worship with, sing songs and a lot of times, who receive the word. And so many times, in our lives we've seen that, and in my personal life I've seen, hurt can only come from people we love. It cannot come from people we don't love, because, we're not going to be bothered about that. If someone hurts you who we don't love, why are we bothered? I personally won't be bothered. And so, a lot of times we see that people are bound, people are not free because of hurts or offenses which has happened in our life from people we love. I've seen people leaving the company because they've had a problem with the boss. I'm not saying that you don't have a problem, but a lot of times, what I've realized is you don't leave a company because you have a problem. You leave a company for other reasons. I've seen people leaving the church because they're offended by something which the pastor said or some leader they don't like, or nothing wrong in leaving a church, but you don't leave just because you're offended for that. Because that's not going to stop. If you go to the next church, that's going to happen. If you go to the next company, that's going to happen. You get out of relationships because, you're just offended. I know you don't have a soft heart. Even in relationships. And I've seen that. I remember when I came to the Lord, the first thing what the preacher preached, I'm talking about 19 years back, was forgiveness. And, I'm getting more than this on forgiveness. But I remember, the preacher said, why don't you write letters to people who you have hurt? And I immediately wrote a letter to my dad, and, because I felt I hurt my dad, so I wrote to him, and I wrote to another uncle, and who I felt that I had hurt. And now, I know I felt so free after that, because, sometimes it's good to forgive when you're there. So I learned a lot about forgiveness even at that time. But, for example, this uncle who got this letter took it and showed it to everybody, saying that, see, I told you he was wrong. And then it depends on, then the challenge comes. How do you react at that time? When someone, and that you did it because you wanted to be right with God. So now if someone, I remember the preacher saying over there, you need to be careful if you're writing letters. If you have a legal case against somebody, don't do that, because they'll take it and present it in the court. You're doing it with the right heart, but you need to make sure that you're right in that sense, where someone. But what I'm trying to say is the important thing is to have a soft heart, and say that. And when you do that with a heart, you're seeing that there is a healing that has taken place, and breakthroughs immediately start happening in your life, because God loves the heart which you have for Him, and with the softness which you're showing Him. Amen. Hallelujah. 2 Timothy 3:2 says, "For men will be lovers of themselves, lovers of money, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unholy." Listen, a lot of times, why we are not able to forgive somebody and why we can't let go is because we're selfish. Listen, I'm speaking to myself, so many times I'm not able to do something because I feel that, there's a selfishness in me, and I'm not willing to get out of that. Lovers of themselves, because you're not thinking about somebody else. And so many times, that's where really God comes to check our hearts. In Luke 17:1, what Jesus said, the word offenses comes from a Greek word called scandalon, which means a trap. So what Jesus is saying over here is if you do not forgive, it goes on to say that, if a brother sins 7 times, you forgive. If you do not forgive, you can be in a trap. And so many times people in a church are in a trap because they have not been able to forgive and get healed from the offenses. And devil traps them in every other area. They don't get freedom anywhere. Because we have been unable to keep our hearts soft. And then you wonder, I've been praying, I've been worshiping, I've been fasting. Why am I not getting breakthrough? The Lord saying, go and forgive. I'm going to tell more stories of amazing breakthroughs which have come in my life. But the first thing is important to understand what the Word says. And Word says it comes from a trap. It can be, it can be your husband and wife. It can be parents and children. It can be brothers and sisters. It can be, so many times it can be people you're working with. So many times, God may tell you, you need to go and show love. You need to go and show, your heart of forgiveness. 2 Timothy 2:24-26. I'm going to build some, you need to build a solid biblical background. So many times, people didn't know, like Luke 17:1, it says that, the word offense comes from the Greek word trap. Let's see what this scripture says. I'm using the Amplified Version so that, we get a clear on what Paul is trying to tell Timothy. It says, the servant of the Lord must not participate in quarrels, but must be kind to everyone, skilled in teaching, patient and tolerant when wronged. He must correct those who are in opposition with courtesy and gentleness, in the hope that God may grant that they will repent and lead to the knowledge of the truth, and that they have come to the senses and escaped from the trap of the devil, having been held captive by him to do his will. Here Paul's telling Timothy, those who are in quarrel or in opposition fall into a trap and are held prisoners to the devil's will. My God, I was like, when sometimes you hear this and, sometimes this word just comes into you. You know what? What Paul is trying to tell Timothy over here is, if you ever, it's not whether you've quarreled with somebody or if you've hurt somebody. That's not what he's trying to say over here. If you continue in that state of quarrel, you see some people always, what Paul is trying to tell Timothy is, if you're continuing always in that state of quarrel, and if you're not tolerant when someone has wronged you, then what happens is you can be in the trap of the devil, and he may get you to do his will. Wow, this is scriptures, guys. So sometimes we don't understand, why we are not getting a breakthrough. And you're saying, I'm having revival, I'm having the fire, I love Jesus. The Lord's saying, sometimes you just need to let go. And there are two types of offenses or offended people. The first is those who have been treated unjustly. And the second is those who believe they have been treated unjustly. You can be neither of that, You could have been treated unjustly, or you believe that you've been treated unjustly. And you can belong to either of. And sometimes the biggest challenge, the problem is with the second type of people. People who believe that they've been treated unjustly. And a lot of times, their belief, I've seen in my life, that belief comes a lot of times from inaccurate information. It doesn't necessarily come from the correct information. I remember, I used to work in a company years back in Dubai, and there was this man who gave me this job. I mean, he didn't give me directly, but he helped me, and he was really close to me, and then I started rising up in the company, and as I rose up, he was always nice to me, and then I rose up so quick, it came to a place that, I felt that he didn't like the way I was rising up, and because of that, he was against me. And obviously, there were people in his same position supporting me, and so and I also felt that he didn't know what I was doing or where the company wanted to do, and he was not good. And it came to a place not just because I felt that, but also because of information which was fed to me through him. And there was part truth, but everything was not true. And I started taking it, and obviously because, this somebody else was having a problem, and I started supporting him. It's all really getting into these things, and it came to a place, in the end, I knew I had to leave the company. And I was doing so well, the product was doing so well, and I felt that it was because of this man, and I left the company and moved to Hong Kong, and then moved to Bahrain. I'm talking about 3 years later, and again, I started a product. It was starting to compete with this company, and we started doing really well. And they came to England, and I remember 2005, one day when I was in prayer, and I was really seeking God for breakthroughs, especially, we had a house in New Zealand next to a funeral home, and I wanted to sell that, and I've been seeking God. I was saying, Lord, I'm really in trouble, Lord. And Lord said, you know what, you need to forgive this man. You're still hurt against him. I said, Lord, you know what, I've done that 100 times. Because I knew the power of forgiveness, and I genuinely, like in my heart, I've said, Lord, I said, I forgive him, but Lord said, you know what, you need to send an email to tell him you're sorry. And that's really tough sometimes, And sometimes it's really tough. Think about it, and you've gone on and you've done well and you've come up a long way. I'm talking about 4 years back, and you started from nothing, and you're saying, no, you need to forgive him. And he was ahead of this product. I mean, it's like a competing. So, you know what? Oh, Lord, I don't know what to write. And then I started writing this email, and I wrote an email to him and said, I'm really sorry, if I've hurt you, I didn't really mean it, and, in that sense, and thank you for all your help. And a simple, nice email, and he writes one back to me. And he says, you know what, I've always loved you. I know it's just been misunderstanding, and I always felt that you should come up in the company and this. And he wrote a really nice email back, which was like really touching. But that is not the point. I mean, obviously, after a couple of weeks after that, he gets sacked from the company for whatever reasons people come to know. But, that's something. But for me, I know that, after that, he was always in touch with me, and I could meet him, and, we could, even when he moved out, and the relationship was completely healed. But more than that, immediately I remember after 1 week, the property gets sold, which I've been really, really contending for. The breakthrough was so important because, no one was buying next to a funeral home and in the real estate agent was saying that, no one can buy because the people over there won't buy, the Chinese won't buy, the only people who will buy will be some, Indians or something like that who don't have a problem. And that was getting so difficult over there in Auckland to sell that. But I want to, in a week, things just shift because suddenly God starts working a miracle out. But you know what? I mean, I remember, sometimes it's difficult to come to this place and send his email to someone like that. And, it's easy to say in your heart. But then, you know why I knew that? Why I remember, at that season, though I had asked for forgiveness, how you know that you've not really forgiven him from your heart? Because you always want to compete with that product. Not for a bad reason, not for a good reason, but for really because you want to be better than that. Because you're hurt that, you did something and, they've come up. And that shows a sign it's not completely been healed. You're saying that you want to be, you're healed and you're forgiven, but in your heart, you don't want it to come up because you don't love that anymore. Or you don't love that person anymore. If you've really forgiven, you'll start loving that person. And the offense is healed, that's the way you know. So, in that, I realized something. That more than what he has hurt me, I felt that he had hurt me. And so many times, why I'm telling the stories, I know people over here also, you may feel that you've been treated unjustly, but sometimes it can just be a feeling that person doesn't love me, that person doesn't do good to me. He may have no problem. And you start doing things because, you start hearing what somebody else has told, and that becomes what you think. And suddenly you start seeing your heart has become hard because of all this. Isaiah 48:10 says, "Behold, I have refined you, but not as silver. I have tested you in the furnace of affliction." Listen, I believe it is in times of affliction where your heart is really tested. Listen, is it too tough for you guys? I'm building on the word because I believe that the word is so important to understand this. I don't want to tell something which I feel is right, and sometimes you speak so much about forgiveness. It's much more than that today. I really want to build a biblical foundation on this, and I just feel that the Lord wants to break through in people's areas. Even people watching, I believe that there's going to be breakthroughs as you're just going to receive this, even before today finishes. Amen. Listen, there is testing in this furnace of affliction. And God checks our hearts. And what happens, I believe, in that time is there's a refining of our hearts. 1 Peter 1:6-7 says, "In this you greatly rejoice, though now for a little while, if need be, you have been grieved by various trials, that the genuineness of your faith, being much more precious than gold that perishes, though it is tested by fire, may be found to praise, honor, and glory at the revelation of Jesus Christ. Listen, your faith is much more precious than gold. And the refining which happens in our hearts is so important to check the genuineness of our faith. Listen, it's easy to praise God when everything is good. It's easy to praise God, in a surrounding where everybody are praising God and worshiping Him, and you see revival and all that. But when things get tough, when you're facing afflictions, when times of trouble come, when you're put alone, those are the times where God starts, when you seek the Lord and when you cry out to God and when you humble yourself before God and cry out, oh Lord, you know what? You test my heart, Lord. And those are times in that brokenness is where Lord really tests our faith, the genuineness of our faith. And our hearts are refined to become like gold. Wow. And I know I've been in seasons where this, once I remember, if you guys haven't read this book by John Bevere years back, I've been knowing so much, and as I was reading this book, John Bevere, called Bait of Satan. And in that season, and sometimes I can even pick it up now and read, because some of these books are like classics. And every time I read it, and you go into this place of where God really tests your heart and see whether there's any offense, because He wants our hearts like gold. Hallelujah. Not just because He wants to give you a breakthrough, because you are His son and daughter. He wants our heart. And He wants it refined like gold. He's after our heart and checking the genuineness of our faith. Sometimes it's easy to see, I'm in revival, I've been filled with joy, and I love all those things. But the most precious times are times where you come into this deep place of repentance, when you cry out to God, and not just only repent, but also you come to this place where you just want to let go of every offense, so that your heart is so pure before God. Hallelujah. God refines us with, not always, but sometimes with afflictions, trials, and tribulations. He refines us, and you can either take it to refine. Sometimes, why am I going through it? But there's a refining process. God is building your character in those times for something good. And it's so good to hold on to in that place, because things are going to change. But He's also, what He's doing at that time, He's building your character. He's refining your heart, so that those times of trial and tribulation, and in those times, God is really building you up as a son and a daughter of our Lord Jesus Christ. And He's also, what He will do at that time is He will separate the impurities, whether it is strife, whether it is anger, whether it is unforgiveness, whether it is bitterness, whether it is hatred. Listen, all these things, those are the impurities which the devil wants to hold you, and he wants to trap you with. And it's in these, it's in that time where God really checks our heart for this. And He really sets us free. And He breaks that power when you humble yourself, and when you repent, and when you forgive and let go of those offenses. Proverbs 18:19 says, brother offended is harder to win than a strong city, and contentions are like the bars of a castle. Wow. A brother offended is harder to win than a city. Think about it. That means, what it says? A brother offended. That means a brother who's trapped by the devil is harder to win than even winning a city. It is that tough for people who are staying in this place of offense. And you know what? A lot of times, people who are really offended, and they'll come and tell you, Or, I'm really hurt with that pastor. Really hurt with the church. And then you tell them, you know what, brother, you need to forgive. I've forgiven. I have no problem against that person, But then again, you'll see after 3 months, again they'll say, you know what, but, that pastor, that church, they did all that again. Brother, you need to. No, I have no problem. You hear this over and over again. Because they're still offended. And you know what? A lot of times it's so easy for them to get offended in the new place. And we know what's the one sign of them they're offended? They won't want to get close. Because if you get close, they're scared that you'll get offended. Listen, I'm speaking to some people, even people who are watching. When you're offended, you will not want to get close because you'll be scared whether you'll be offended again. So you'll try, what you'll try to do? You'll try to stay away, get less involved. You know what? I'll do this. I'll come to Sunday. I'll come to worship, And that's a trap of the devil. We construct walls so that we can safeguard our hearts and prevent any future wounds. That's exactly what it is. Because already we've been hurt and we've been wounded. We don't want more wounds, So, what we'll do? Some safeguarding. So those are in finances and, suppose you have FC authorization, you need to have a safeguarding account. That is like to keep all that. Just like that, you'll safeguard things over here. You don't want to, you don't want to give everything away. Because you've been hurt. And I've been in this place, guys. I'm speaking from my heart, where I've been in. And I have to check every time. And even recently, sometimes there's seasons, and sometimes, impurities come. It's so easy for it to come. It's so easy for impurity to just come, and if you don't check. And I know I have to check. And in this season, I've been checking. And there's so many impurities where I had to get rid of so that, I can come into this place where I've been refined with the genuineness of faith. I'm going to share even what's happening in this season. Love does not seek his own, but hurt people become more and more self-centered and self-seeking and self-ordained. So easy, In Israel, there are two seas. One is the Sea of Galilee, and the other is the Dead Sea. And in the Sea of Galilee, there's life, there's plants, there's living things growing because it just flows. And Sea of Galilee flows into the Jordan River, and from Jordan River it goes onto the Dead Sea. And in Dead Sea, there's no life, there's no living things, there's no plants, there's nothing living over there because there's no flow. And both are in Israel, both these seas. Listen, if there's not life flowing through you, and if there's unforgiveness and bitterness, and if you're stuck, it'll be like a dead sea. There's nothing which will grow over there. And I believe that we've been called for life to flow through us. And that's why there's fruit in Sea of Galilee. That's why there's living plants and there's fish and there's things growing over there. But no fish will grow in the Dead Sea. We can stay alive in the Dead Sea because it'll die. So many times if you don't let go, if there's no life flowing through us, and if you don't let go, we can become like the Dead Sea. I want to speak about someone who'd been genuinely mistreated. Most of you know the story of Joseph. And Joseph had been genuinely mistreated. But you know what God was doing in that? He was building his character. I want to quickly tell the story of Joseph in my own version, my version, Rocky Standard Version. And I believe he had been genuinely mistreated. You know? Joseph was obviously a son of Jacob, and he had a dream. In his dream, he saw that his brothers and his father came and bowed before him. And Joseph was like, he was so happy. God had shown me a dream. And he goes and tells his brothers, and his father that, you're going to come and bow before me. And I'm going to be like the head. And his brothers didn't, react too well. They sell him over to a slave trader. And, it must have been really tough for a young boy just being sold over to a slave trader. And he was put in a dungeon first, and then he was sold. And from there, the slave trader sells him to Potiphar's house and into Pharaoh, and he becomes a servant of the Pharaoh, and God starts exalting him there. And for 10 years, he starts serving the Potiphar's house, and then again he runs into a problem because Potiphar's wife, wants to tries to sexually come and sexually come and harass him. And so what he does is he runs away from Potiphar's wife, and more than anything, she accuses him of trying to rape her, and Potiphar puts him in the jail. It must have been really tough. This guy's so faithful serving over there, and because he did something right, he was put in jail. And he stays in the jail, and in the jail, the story, there's a butler and a butcher. Butler and a baker. And then he sees the dream. They have a dream, and they know that he can interpret dreams. And then they tell him about the dream, and he interprets it correctly. And then you see one of them, it happens just like what he had told in the dream. But one of them lives, and still he doesn't get out. And then it comes to a place where Pharaoh has a dream. And then one of them who was alive remembers that, there's this man in Joseph who can interpret dreams. And from there, anyway, what I want to come over here is he comes out and he becomes a chief minister because there's a 7-year famine which is going to come upon, and Joseph is made in charge of that. He's made like the prime minister of the place. It took him so many years, I don't know how many years, for that 15 years he was from a thing. But, what really sees his heart is in Genesis 45, verses 5 to 8. I want to come to this place. It says, he's come to this place, this famine. Now his brothers have come to meet him. This shows his real heart. It says, but now, Joseph is telling his brothers, but now do not therefore be grieved or angry with yourself because you sold me here. For God sent me before you to preserve life. For these 2 years of famine has been in the land, and there are still 5 years in which there will be neither plowing nor harvesting. And God sent me before you to preserve a posterity for you in the earth, and to save your lives by a great deliverance. So it was not you who sent me here, but God. And he has made me a father to Pharaoh, and lord of all his house, and a ruler throughout all the land of Egypt. Listen. You know what Joseph is telling over here? It is not you who sent me here. It was they who sold him to a slave trader. And he was put in dungeon. He suffered everything. And you know what? After all this, what Joseph is saying? It is not you who sent, but God who sent me here. Listen, some of the things where you're placed, what you're going through, is God is preparing us. Because he has a great plan for our future. But there had to be a refining in his heart to come to this place for Joseph and say that, it is not you who sent me here, but God sent me here so that you can be preserved and we can be preserved, because he knew the beginning from the end. He knew the end from the beginning, Isn't it amazing? So now it is not for you who sent me here, but God. He has made me a father to Pharaoh and lord of all his house and a ruler throughout all the land of Egypt. Wow. That is exaltation. Exaltation when he stayed in humility. When he was refined, he allowed himself to be refined. Listen, when he was in the jail, when he was in the dungeon, he would have never thought that he's going to become the prime minister of the nation. Listen, if God's called us, if we stay with a soft heart, exaltation is going to come. There will be times of refining. There will be times where we need to get refined. And sometimes, we're going through these times of refining and you're wondering, those are difficult. Joseph would have found it so difficult in the dungeon. He was a small child put in the dungeon. He would have found it so difficult in the jail because jails are not like what it was here now. Or, jails were so dark. It was so miserable. And he endured all that over there because, God was with him. And he came out with a refined heart. That is the most important thing. He didn't have the grudge. He could have easily told his brothers, you know what, you guys put me over here. Now I'll show you a lesson. I'll teach you a lesson. But the softness of heart comes when he's telling them, you know what? It's not you who sent me here, but God who sent me here. And I've become the leader of the country because God did that for me. We want to look at another person. Sometimes it's easy to get betrayed by brothers, but it's very difficult when you get betrayed by fathers. Fathers can be people, may not be natural fathers. It can be even spiritual fathers, people who we consider as fathers. You see, David, he really loved Saul, He won the battle with David and Goliath, and he became his son-in-law, Michal's husband, and he soon started getting promoted. But suddenly, Saul started becoming jealous of David because Saul knew that God was with David. And he also became a covenant brother to Jonathan, Saul's son. So he was part of David's household. Like he used to eat in the king's table, in Saul's table, and he was a son to him. But suddenly Saul wants to kill him, and David is running away. And he comes to this place, in the cave of En-Gedi. Why he's there is Saul is pursuing him, and he has just killed 85 priests of the Lord because they gave food and water to David. And now, what happens is that Saul falls into David's hands. In 1 Samuel 24 and 11 and 12, anybody in this place would just kill Saul because, if you let him go, he's going to kill David. And more than anything, he could have justified himself saying, you know what? He killed the priests of the Lord, 85 priests that too. Not one priest. Because you know why? The only reason Saul killed them is because they gave water and food to David. But you know what David says over here? In 1 Samuel 24, 11 and 12 says, oh wow. Moreover, now David is telling Saul, after not killing him, it says, moreover, my father, see the corner of your robe in my hand. For in that I cut the corner of your robe and did not kill you. Know and see that there is neither evil nor rebellion in my hand. Neither evil nor rebellion. And I have not sinned against you. Yet you hunt my life to take it. Let the Lord judge between you and me. And let the Lord avenge me on you. But my hand shall not be against you. That is like, you know what? And he also had a prophetic word that he's going to become the king. He could have thought that, you know what, I'll kill Saul and I'll become the king. Because anyway, God wanted me as a king. But he knew that was not the time. And he could not raise his hand against his father. That shows, that's why God called David a man after my own heart, even though he had messed up. Because he had such a soft heart. He was refined. And you know what? After all this, and that to a father doing against, after all this again, now David would have thought, now it's all finished. Now I can come back into the palace and I'll be in king. But again, Saul pursues him. He doesn't stop over there. He again pursues him. And this time with 3,000 men. And David does not even have an army. 3,000 people going after David. And again, Saul falls into David's hands in the cave. And you know what again David does? Now this time Abishai, who is one of his faithful sons, tells David, you know what, now we need to finish Saul. Because you know what, if you don't kill him now, that's like, you're going to be killed. We are all going to be killed. But let's just see what David says. Yeah, Abishai said to David in 1 Samuel 2:26, 8 and 11, it says, God has delivered your enemy into your hand this day. Now therefore, please, let me strike him head once with a spear right to the earth, and I will not have to strike him a second time. But David said to Abishai, do not destroy him. For who can stretch out his hand against the Lord's anointed and be guiltless? David said furthermore, as the Lord lives, the Lord shall strike him, or his days shall come to die. He shall go out of battle and perish. Lord forbid that I should stretch out my hand against the Lord's anointed. But please take now the spear and the jug of water that are by his head, and let us go. Wow, that is like, and he let him go. He did not kill Saul. Listen, I've seen, in my life, it's been sometimes tough when fathers who you really love and at least you honor, and they really hurt you. And it really needs a grace to forgive them. For me, in my life, I remember when I was young, my mother's father, it was like my grandfather, abused me. For me, it was so difficult to come to this place and forgive him. Because when your grandfather abuses you, like, you can't even tell your parents, you can't even tell your mother. I couldn't tell anybody. And for me, a lot of times, even as I grew up, until I came to the Lord, it was so difficult, like, to trust people, because you knew people who you love could abuse you. And it had to come to a place where I had to really soften my heart and say that, Lord, I forgive him. And I remember, I think a week or 10 days before he died, after years, and I remember I had to come to this place, and I had this privilege of, even leading him to the Lord, and he was crying like a thing, probably of all the guilt. So people who you really trust and can be like your fathers, and when they abuse you, it's so difficult to come to this place of forgiveness. And I'm saying this because, I don't want to say this because I'm saying this because I want to help people. It's not like always, you're trying to, people say, are you accusing? No, that's not the point here. I have only love for him, but I want to really help people. Suppose people in your family have abused you, or sometimes it's so difficult to forgive them, and so many times you're caught in the trap of the devil. And it can be nothing more than that. Like, think about it. When it's like your grandfather. I remember I was a cricket player, and there was a coach who really cared about me, and I really learned my game from. And one day, I remember in my room, he abused me sexually. And that was so difficult for me. It was like heartbreaking. And really, sometimes you can't even tell anybody. And both these people are not alive now, but. And it really broke me, And as you grew up, you don't even have the Lord. And sometimes, you wonder why you're going through what you wonder is because, these have repercussions and you start behaving so many times like that because you've been hurt. And I remember, there was a season I had to take to forgive them. And so many times you would have seen people who have been abused like this, or especially from fathers. And if you can't forgive them, you come to this place where you're going to be completely in bondage because it's like a trap which you are in. I'm saying this because I really want to open things up so people, sometimes you become vulnerable before the Lord, and Lord wants to heal people. And the only way He can heal is if you let go and say that, you know what? And I can understand what David is going through over here, suppose. We are in this place, what you will do? Especially when it's your father, or when it's your grandfather, or people you love, who people you really consider, you love and consider as fathers in your life. John Bevere tells a story. Years back, he was in this church as a youth pastor. And he was preaching some good word to the youth, and so there was one of the associate senior pastors who was much above him and who he had to report to him. His son was in the youth group. He didn't like what was being preached because things were not right in his house and family. So suddenly this man started accusing John Bevere to the senior pastor of the church. And very soon, the relationship between the senior pastor and John Bevere was completely cut off. And his wife, Lisa, was going to have a baby. And like they were really struggling as they're coming up. And now rumors were going around everywhere, even in the youth group, that he's going to be sacked from this job. And this man who didn't like him will come to him and say, you know what, senior pastor doesn't like you. And like it came to a place that everybody in the church was saying that he's going to be sacked. And then Lisa said, you need to find a job, you need to look. But John Bevere told him, when he started the law, he said, you know what, if God's brought me here, no one can take me out unless God takes me out. And he goes before the Lord, and one day, it's all known that he's going to be sacked. And then senior pastor calls him into his office. And then when he goes into senior pastor's office, he thought that now it's finished. Then you know what the senior pastor tells him? He says, that man doesn't like you, but you know what? God's brought you over here and no one can take you out. But you know what John does afterwards? And a couple of months pass and Lord tells him, go and humble yourself before this man who has been accusing you. And a senior pastor tells him, that man doesn't like you, isn't it? So he said, I don't know. And after 2 months, he goes before this man. He was coming into his office. And he goes before and humbles him. And he says, you know what, I'm really sorry if I've hurt you. He really poured out his love. And their relationship was healed. And then afterwards, he became all right with this man. But after 6 months, after a few months, this man who had created all these problems for John Bevere gets sacked. But he had no animosity against him because the senior pastor and everybody comes to know of everything what she was doing. Listen, that's the same thing over here what David is telling. David's saying, you know what? Listen, Saul, he may have done wrong, but God's going to punish him. I can't punish him because he's God's anointed. But his judgment will come. Day will come. When people are against you and doing things, sometimes, you don't stretch out your hand and hurt the anointed, but time will come. But, you humble yourself, you become soft. And I think it's such an important thing, so that, you come to this place where your heart is so soft before the Lord. And what David said happened to that man. If you look at in 2 Samuel 1:14 and 15, and you know what? Another man came and boasted after Saul was killed in the battle. They came to David and boasted, you know what? I've killed him. And you know what David said? I'm going to kill you because you touched the Lord's anointed. He thought that he was like, oh, David will be really happy, and he was his enemy. He said, but how dare you touch the Lord's anointed? He was killed in the battle. He just tried to help Saul out, but David was so annoyed with him, and he just killed him because he knew that was not God's plan. Listen, what we're trying to tell over here is that it's so important to be soft before the Lord. It's so important to come to this place, especially when people who are close, like I said, whether it's your brothers, whether it's your family, whether it's people who you really love, whether it's your fathers in some kind, when they hurt you, when they betray you, when they take away, and you think that you know what, it's all right for you to judge. And I've come to this place, and the more you come, remember, I want to tell the story and close, this season, I've been going through real brokenness, and because we've started a new company, and it's not been easy. It's been, and I know that I had to leave the other place, and because it was not going, not because I was hurt in that sense, but I knew that's where. But I had to come to this place. I'd come to this place where the previous company I was working for, the boss over there, I had a really good relationship with him over 12 years, and I felt like, we were like really, really close in that sense, though we don't meet, but and he had really helped me, and I was so unhappy that even after I left, not because I left, I wanted to leave anyway, but my biggest unhappiness was that the relationship got completely broken off for different reasons. And I was like, I've been praying for like months, and I've been saying, Lord, you need to heal this relationship. And there seemed to be no way, because things were just going out. And for me, I wanted that, but I also wanted a breakthrough in my life, and, in personally. And I remember it was, I think it was June 3rd. Exactly, June 3rd. And I was just crying out before the Lord, and I was crying out before the Lord in my office, and I was just praying and seeking the Lord, and there's been the season, but on June 3rd especially, I cried out. I said, Lord, I have no way. Things are not working. Things are not going right. Lord, what do you want me to do, Lord? Lord, I just humble myself. I was crying out to Him. And in that place, you know what Lord told me? Lord said, you need to forgive this man. I said, Lord, forgive him? He's not going to even speak to me, or restore the relationship. I said, he's not going to speak to me if I go and call him, because now things have gotten so bad, but I would love to. And I just kept it, because I didn't know how I could speak to him. There was no way. It was like impossible, to call him and speak to him. And even if I call him and speak, he wouldn't pick up the phone. He wouldn't call me back, because it had reached that level now, And so it seemed an impossible. But then again, like I was just thinking, so because sometimes it's pride, because it's pride also. Like it's like you're again coming to a place of, it comes to a place of real humility to call at that situation, because it's not good. It's been too much of hurts, and which have gone either way. And again, I just put out. I said, I don't know what to do. I don't mind, Lord, but anyway, he's not going to pick up the phone. So what? So the Lord said, you know what? Still, it doesn't matter. You need to, even if it doesn't matter, you do what you're called to do. I've asked you to do something. You do that. It doesn't matter how he behaves against you, because as long as you do it, then I have forgiven you. Then and when the Lord said that, then I said, okay, I don't mind. So I gave him a call. He didn't reply back. Oh, no. I said, oh, no, I've done my job. That's finished. Sometimes it's easy, But it happens at the end of the day, things happen, change around, and by evening, he calls me back, which is not normal. He sends me a text and says, oh, I saw you have called. I'm in a board meeting. I'll call you back, which is not normal. He wouldn't have done that. And I said, yeah, I just want to speak to you. And then, and anyway, he calls me back. And then we speak for a long time. And I say, I'm really sorry, things have gone. And just, I didn't mean it, you know. And he said, even you didn't mean it. And I mean, it really went in a good way where I felt at least we could speak back and get back to things. And I told him about what I'm planning to do. He said, I already know that. And I mean, I've never done that like for over a year and a half, and things were going back. And suddenly, what I'm trying to say is how God, when he softens your heart, you come to this place where you're willing to humble yourself so that you can have the grace and the humility to speak in a humble way. Sometimes, you know what, when you speak, you know, people, I think even when they are speaking to you, they know whether you're humble. And anyway, after that, I've been able to speak, and I believe, I'm not saying that we're completely restored, but I've done what God told me to do. And Preeti has a dream. I think it's a week after that. He said, season changed the day Muhammad Ali died. And you know what? The day Muhammad Ali died was June 3rd. I don't think it's just coincidence. I don't think it just happens like that. I know that things started shifting for us. We started suddenly seeing breakthroughs happening. Big time breakthroughs, which is just being held. I don't think it's by accident. You know, when you come to the softness of, into this place of softness, miracles happen. I don't think God can show a dream and say like, oh, you know what day Muhammad Ali died? And that happens to be June 3rd, and that happens to be the same day, you know, you come to this place of forgiveness and you forgive. This is what I'm trying to say over here is the power is released when offenses are healed. Just want to quickly bow your heads down and look at our hearts. Jesus said, it would be better for him if a millstone were hung around his neck who has offenses, and if he had thrown into the sea, and that he should offend one of these little ones. If your brother sins against you, rebuke him, and if he repents, forgive him. And if he sins against you 7 times in a day, 7 times in a day return to you, saying, I repent, you shall forgive him. Wherever you are in your life, Lord wants you to come to this place, and he wants to forgive you. But he's asking to check your hearts right now. It can be from when you grew up as a child. People especially who are close to you, your family. Lord may show you people even right now who you have offense against. Especially people who you are really close. I don't want to talk about people today who are not close to you, people who are really close. It can be your father or your mother. It can be your brother or your sister. It can be people who have been your best friends and best buddies and people in the church, and you're hurt with them. You're offended. You have so much of hurt because you just feel that they have hurt you. And it's like a trap of the devil in your life, and Lord wants to show them to you because he wants to release that right now. He wants you to forgive them. Bible says, brother offended is harder to win than a large city. He wants to release his grace right now into your life for you to come into this softness where He wants to refine you so that you can forgive those people. It can be that some people have betrayed you, who you really loved and it's not been easy. I just see there are many people over here. Lord is just releasing a fresh healing, a healing of hearts. Healing of relationships. He wants to create gold in our hearts.
You can have it all. Every part of my world. Take this life and breathe on. This heart that is now yours. Lord, you can have it all, Lord. Every part of my world. Take this life and breathe on. This heart that is now yours. And when I'm in your presence, how you rearrange me. When I'm in your presence, you make all things new again. And when I'm in your presence, you make all things new again.
There are people you need to forgive, and who you want to just let go from your life in terms of that you're hurt. If the Lord is showing you somebody, just tell them that, Lord, I just want to let go, Lord. I want to release them, Lord. Maybe that they have really betrayed you, they've hurt you. Or it can be like you just feel that they've really hurt you, they don't love you, and whatever you're doing, as long as you're surrendering, Lord's heart is for you right now. I just see there's a strong presence of the Lord just coming and breaking hearts right now. It's just creating that softness in your heart. Holy Spirit, thank you right now. Let your presence just fall right now over here. Amen. Can you just look at me for couple of minutes? You know what's happened right now? I just see people have received breakthroughs. You know, some of you are going to feel a fresh freedom even when you leave. Right from here, that's a sign of a breakthrough. Some of you, not even now, even when you go back home or maybe tomorrow, God's going to speak to you. God's going to speak to you because, you know, He wants to soften our hearts. He's going to speak to you, and as you humble yourself, as you forgive those people right from your heart, and if you need to speak to them or whatever it is you need to do that, because that's when God breaks through into your life. Not just when you humble yourself over here, but when you do what God's called you to do. When you take that decision, when you take that action. Sometimes it's better to do it as quickly as possible, because afterwards when you go, you may forget it. Even when you go, you know, if you want to call somebody over here, if you want to text somebody, if you want to do whatever you need to do that. Because God just loves it when you do that. He's after our hearts. Amen. Let's go in the love of the Father, the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit. God bless you guys. Amen.